What's up, everyone? How we doing tonight? Hopefully, your trading all went well today. We had a big down day. All right, dollar signs. I see this as a good sign then. Awesome. On these big days, oftentimes when we're bearish, because you'll notice from trading indices, we're more often than that bullish. And when we go down, it's more often than that a retracement. And you can get caught pretty easily in trying to call the exact low before it could keep going down, things like that. So on days like this, I tend to be very conservative. Just overall, you guys know I tend to be very conservative just in general. But on days like this, I make sure that basically I get out of the market before I get bitten. This is the best way I can put it. Now, personally, this morning I was bullish for some reason, but following my earlier plan, this was a mistake by myself. Following my earlier plan, I am bearish up until these are taken out, right? These were my objectives. We were looking more specifically in a 4-hour chart. We were looking at the equal lows right here. So let me just mark that out. Are they equal lows or are they 55.25? Let's look at this low, 53. So yes, relative equal lows right here were an objective. Let's just mark it out as such. And as well, our relative equal lows below. This was my weekly bias. I was looking for lower to then go higher, and I messed up with that specific bias, but we'll be speaking on it. Now, what happened today? Well, manipulation of the week. We're going in the opposite direction of our drawn liquidity. Could also be reversing lower. That is a possibility we have to consider, specifically since now that we are in a 4-hour chart, we have taken out liquidity with SMT right on the daily open. So let me just mark this out. So as you can see right here, ES has taken out this high. This is not any specific high. It is not previous week's high where I could possibly say that this is a low of week. For your difference, we had equal highs to and lower time frame. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that, right? And I see them right here. We'll be speaking on it, but I let the Asian session price action define what I was seeing, and I should not. It is not part of my model specifically. But we all have those days. I still ended up positive on the days, so I'm quite happy. But because of that, I didn't manage to be on side with any shorts to catch some of these big moves, these home runs, right? But if we look at the price action, very, very simple. 10 a.m. Oh, sorry, just before 10 a.m. 10 a.m. power of three, opened high, expanded all the way to our objectives. Of course, our equal lows as we framed. This one looks lower. It's crazy to me, but when I highlight them, oh yeah, no, that's because it is. It's 53. All right, so this one is lower. These are net relative equal lows, sorry. But this area of liquidity, this low resistance area, right? A lot of people like to call it trendline liquidity. I don't, because that's not how I utilize it. But these failure swings in close proximity form a high probability liquidity pool. So those were some big objectives for me today. So let me just mark them out so that once we go into our lower time frame charts, we can see them and also see SMT at these levels to frame any sort of long ideas. And let's actually plot this one too, which is the one that they formed SMT on. If we go down to our 15-minute and plot our sessions, just so we can see, this is a little too small for my liking, just so we can see, we had a London framework, but it was completed pre-New York Open. Let me go look at the news very quickly to remind myself that yes, it was indeed 10 a.m. news. So today, we did not have any clear setup. Basically, well, we did have a clear setup, sorry, before 10 a.m., but we did not have a clear Judah swing in my book. So because of that, I was waiting all the way up until 10 a.m. before taking a trade. And of course, we'll go down to the 1-minute frame. Why, to me, that was not a valid Judah swing. But what we can see very clearly is we had a London setup. And right on 9:30 open, we went to complete that framework, that London raid. The reason why I was bullish, as I said, is that I looked at these equal highs, all of this consolidation, and I thought that we would go. But what you have to keep in mind is it's not because there's equal highs that the market will go there. And especially talking about order flow, you need to understand basically the development of the week. And with a high impact news on Friday, right, with NFP, more specifically, just NFP week in general, as I stated in my weekly outlook, you should expect the whole week to be manipulation, right? Because more often than that, that is what goes on. The whole week forms manipulation. And also, if we look on ES, formed SMT at these highs by taking out previous day high. So definitely some nice formations at this point, right? To consider a daily high candidate. So was very nice structure to then consider some downside movement. But as we can see, the news pretty much went on side. If we go to the 1 minute chart very quickly, and we go look at 9:30, and I just wanted my charts to align. Sorry, guys. Right at that 9:30 mark, we did not have any clear SMT in my book. We can use this 1 minute swing. Of course, when we're zoomed out like this, it's kind of hard to see, but we had a 1 minute SMT at this point, but no, not much of a Judas swing, right? We didn't have a big move to the upside taking out liquidity. We just had taken out a 1 minute swing high with SMT. So based on the mechanical approach, as I always like to compare, actually that is the wrong swing point, sorry. So yeah, not a swing point on NASDAQ, but as I always say, if there's a swing on ES, I can utilize it. Why was I seeing SMT here just a second ago? I believe I'm confused. I'm not looking at the right spot. Okay, so it was before 9:30, sorry. I wanted to see this SMT, thank you. A little bit slow tonight, guys. A little tired in case you didn't notice. But consolidated right before 9:30 open, and then right on that 9:30, what did we do? We opened high and expanded lower, went to complete our London raid. But as I said, I never trade before news, so I would be waiting up until 10 a.m., meaning that any sort of setups before 10 a.m. are not to be considered in this specific case, as I do not have a clear 9:30 Judas swing based on my understanding. If there was a clear 9:30 Judas swing, I could trade before the news. At the news, what am I going to be looking for? The same thing. I'm going to be looking for manipulation. I believe what made me bullish in this case is how we opened low so aggressively, so I could frame this downside movement as our Judas swing. So if we just look like this, I could frame this whole move lower as a fake move, a manipulation, to then have a 10 a.m. reversal. And especially at this point, we had some higher time frame SMT, I believe. Could be later on closer to 10:10. We'll have a look at it in a second, but specifically at that time, this is what I was framing. Now, if we look if we look a little more closely, what did we do? Well, we just formed a range with that candle and then displaced lower. So no matter what I can say or what I can do pretty much in this specific instance, to me, there is no good setup near 10 a.m. Maybe if you entered right on that 10 a.m. candle, but I always leave time for news volatility to die down, meaning that for me, I'm not entering here. And as soon as we open here and start going lower, I am still framing longs because that is an open low. So for me to be considering going short at this point would be an overextension of the range. And if we look at the current daily range from this point on, we were already down 1% on ES, and if we look at NASDAQ, I believe we were down 3%, 2%, pretty much 1.5% and 1.75% at 10 a.m. open. So all that to say, we already went down a bunch and almost nothing above midnight open. Yes, also that is an important point to point out, which I do not have it on my chart, so let me just put it. There is no trading above midnight open, but I can frame trades to say, okay, well, let's return to midnight open, form my power of three with accumulation, manipulation, distribution. Hence why I was framing longs. Honestly, today was a rough journal to do because the truth is my logic is still the same as it always is. It's just we had a very big down day, and Matt will associate that with what happened with the ports in the US. You can go look into that if you wish. Right, it's nothing algorithmic in that sense, but we just had a very big down day. It happens with Nasdaq. You need corrections, and I was farming longs the whole way, but I did not let that affect my P&L. But we are here to review, right? So what did we do? Well, it's very simple. We died, right? We just expanded lower with no possible retracements up until we had a very specific change, which we'll discuss about in a second. But pretty much unless you were long at 9:30 or before 9:30, there is nothing worthwhile within this PA. And yes, of course, with hindsight, it's easy to see the consolidation, but I don't know if you guys noticed, you had one possible unicorn entry. So I will frame it, right? So this is this a down close candle? Open 9-8. This is a doji. So let me utilize this candle instead. You had your breaker block right here. So we're only looking mechanically breaker block. You have a range formed. You manipulated that range. Now you trade back below it. And you have an overlapping fair value gap at this level, which means that you could have entered. Where would you have entered? Well, more specifically, you would have been in the trade at this specific point. Where would be your stop loss? Well, right at the high of this candle, yes, because you utilize this 3PD array stop loss rule. And then what would be your objective? Well, we have our two liquidity objectives that we framed at this point in time. But if we look at ES and NASDAQ, they both took out the first one, and then they formed a bunch of short-term SMT. So we're looking basically just the markets were very, very uncorrelated. They were not at the same time. So for example, you'll see that here NASDAQ took out this swing low at 1028, while for ES, it took out this specific swing low. I don't believe I was looking at the right one. I meant this one. Basically, the markets were very uncorrelated. There was SMT forming at both sides of the range. We were inducing highs everywhere. Right here, taking out lows, but inducing lows as well, forming equal lows, take them out, forming equal highs to go take them out. Very uncorrelated conditions in the early morning session, but it is to be expected, as we said, with a very aggressive move right on open. It's very simple. You did not have any clear manipulation, so how can you take a trade in that direction? Up until you have more confluences to your trade. So, by the way, if you guys have any questions about the morning session, feel free to ask them. But the one answer that can fit all of them is exactly what I just said, right? We went super aggressive on open. We had no manipulation, meaning for me, there was no possibility to frame a trade idea. I actually tried to long, I believe it was here. Yes, right here. I don't know, that is at the news. I tried to long this right here. We took out liquidity, and yes, we did induce the lows, but I was being aggressive on days like this. I like to be aggressive and take profit early. So I was looking at this specifically, and also 1036 had a 1038 possibly. 37 right here, inverse fair value gap to the left. That is also a trade I took. Right here, you have your breaker block at this level and breaker block on ES. I do have to be precise because once again, this is not a swing point on NASDAQ. Very tight stop loss allowed since you have a fair value gap formed. Order block, inverse fair value gap for your entry. But my partial objective was at this level, sorry. So I got broken even on this trade, ended up the morning with one loss and one break-even trade, decided to walk away. I didn't want to share these because there were a bunch of opportunities, and if you managed to take the long right here, which there was no unicorn entry, no retracement into a unicorn at all, we just invalidated arrays. Well, if you did manage to get that, you got lucky at that part, right? I could be trading every single low and say, I'm going to try and long this. I will try and long this breaker as well, this breaker as well, this breaker as well, and now the fourth one worked. But I just lost 3 in a row. So it's a question of sacrificing consistency or sacrificing results. And I am very happy with sacrificing results because, as I always tend to remind you guys, I'm quite happy with the results provided by my model. Now, looking outside of that, I never look for trades in the late AM. And what I mean by that is 11:30 going into lunch, because my average duration for a trade is an hour. So if I trade anything past basically 11, that is my last chance for an entry because I don't want to be holding the trade during lunch before taking partials, pretty much. But after lunch, I have one very specific framework I can go for. And I believe I saw Brian talking about it. I didn't really look at the Discord this PM, but we are going to frame by looking at lunch highs and lunch lows. Now, if we look at the noon to 1:30 range, you'd see that we have no raid up until we take out the highs. But why can we use, the noon to 1 range? So if we look at the highest high to the lowest low of noon to 1, we'll get this range. And we'll see that we rated the lows to go to the highs. Now, of course, this seems cherry-picked. My specific rule for it is if our retracement objective or our drawn liquidity has been hit, I can frame a reversal with a higher chance, higher probability. So if all my rules for my models align in this specific place. So for example, I have my entry model, I have SMT present. So I do want to zoom in because this was a very tight range, but I have SMT present. So that is one confluence. I have my higher time frame draw that has been hit, right? This was our liquidity objective, that last of the failure swings, that last low resistance liquidity, where you can frame a retracement afterwards. If we look at the range, do I have a breaker block? Well, yes, I do. I have one right here. Do I have an overlapping PD array? I do. So everything for my model aligns here. Now, as I said, I did not trade that. I need to spend more time in the PM session, but I have quite a few other projects that are taking up my time of day at the current moment. If we look right here, gives you very simple entry. Of course, a little drawdown, revisiting your entry, a little stressed. But if we look at the stop as well, you have inversion fair value gap, inversion fair value gap, and your fair value gap giving you a 30 handle stop. And on a day so volatile, it allowed for 3.62 R to your lunch high. So definitely a very nice movement from this. And as you can see from the following, we did extend a little bit higher, but on a day where we already went, what was it, 3% total, 2.5% lower, I'm gonna have very conservative objectives if I'm trading a reversal on the same exact day, meaning in this specific case, I would be out at 10 a.m. open. Just flipping that morning opening candle, right, means that we're basically making a doji. Trading our 4-hour candle is trading into the previous 4-hour candle. This is not interesting to me. And if we look at the high we formed with the news, right, which I always call data highs, this actually comes from ICT Concepts kit, if you guys were wondering. But we took out data highs right here. This is an important level of liquidity. And most importantly, there was SMT at this level. So this is my cue to get out. And of course, there was a final run, especially, wait, where is my SMT? There it is. There was a final run to the downside to retrace into that range. But after this, how can I find a high probability objective when it already took so much for me to frame a long reversal after lunch? Also, we hit 50% of the morning down move in 5 minute forerunner. Possibly. We possibly had. You showed it. Awesome. So basically, it was a rough day for NASDAQ, right? A lot of downside. And if you did trade before 10 a.m., you basically made money no matter what. But this kind of structure at a candle's opening is not something that interests me to continue going short. I'm not going to FOMO in this move because I'm following my rules, waiting until the news event. And then I tried framing longs here just because that is what my model was saying. It was counter my drawn liquidity, but I was trying to trade the retracement. I actually have a picture from this morning. I'll send it in general if you guys want, but I pretty much framed that I was trading retracements. And I am allowed to be trading retracements, but it is a little hard on the mental when you get stopped out, then a break even, and then leave my charts to then see the win in the PM session. A little like Friday. Some nice lunch rates recently. But based off all of that, do we have any questions about what happened today? I think pretty much like the morning session, we can just say we went down. So you switch your bias for bearish. No, the thing is, my bias is bearish. Why? Because my drawn liquidity for the week is higher, so I want us to open low. And taking into consideration its NFP, and that I anticipate here, I won't say expect, I anticipate that the whole week will be associated with manipulation. What does that mean? Well, if I'm looking for higher prices and all the way up until Thursday, Friday, it's going to be manipulation, that means it's going to go down all the way to Thursday, Friday. So my bias is bearish, bullish, whatever you want to say. But for the week, I'm looking for higher prices, meaning it's bullish. But for each day, it is going to change. What changed is that once this objective was reached, and even this one actually, I can start framing some retracements, meaning that even if I'm bullish, I can start looking for longs to frame a retracement higher. Is this going to be a high probability trade? No. It is going to be a medium tier, right? That mid tier. But seeing as I did not get any piece of that short, I wanted to try and take a long, took a loss, took a break even. My maximum amount of trades a day is 3. So I was still allowed to take one more. But as I said, I was not looking at price the PM session. I was working on some other stuff. So basically, I switched my bias from I'm looking for bearish delivery today to I'm looking for a bullish retracement. I'm still bearish. I still expect us to go lower, but I'm trying to trade the morning session on New York, which I thought was going to be a retracement to the upside. Does that make any sense, Freeze? These are not the days where you should listen to what I'm saying and be like, oh, okay, I want to be doing that. If you are a beginner or if you are unprofitable, which I'm not saying you are, Freeze. I'm just saying in general, these are the days that are harder to navigate. And especially when you see such big movement, sometimes it can really take a hit on your mental to be like, okay, I got to stand back from that. It's way harder to stand back from a chart that is already moving very aggressively and has a huge range and it's just going down and you just want to catch that falling knife, to steal ICT's words. But the truth is, on days like this, I'm supposed to lose. Why? Because I see the downside. I see that I have no opportunity to join, and every single trade I try and take to the upside has a 50-50 chance of just turning on me because it had not yet finished its distribution phase and was ready for a retracement. Waiting for the PM session is a safe bet in this specific case, but as I said, I could not trade this PM session, so I looked for morning trades. Do we have any other questions? I'm not seeing anyone type, so I'm going to take that for a no. Thank you all for coming. Here are numbers once again. We'll see each other tomorrow and all the way up until NFP. I wish you all a great night. Good luck if you're trading tomorrow. Be careful after a day like this. Do not anticipate much. Have a great night, guys.